Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Psychedelic Radio. I'm Christina Thomas, and I'm the president and founder of Myself Wellness. And with me is Charles Patti, Chief Education Officer of Myself Wellness. Each week, we'll be pushing boundaries, breaking taboos, and shedding light on the use of psychedelic medicines. We want to Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Psychedelic Radio. My name is Christina Thomas, and I'm the president and founder of Myself Wellness. And with me is Charles Patti, Chief Education Officer. Each week, we'll be pushing boundaries, breaking taboos, and shedding light on the use of psychedelic medicines. We want to share expert knowledge and firsthand accounts of those who have experienced transformative psychic shifts using psychedelics. Journeying with us today is Brad Burge. Brad owns Integration Communications, which was founded in 2020. Brad has earned his BA in Communications and Psychology from Stanford University in 2005 and his MA in Communications from University of California in 2009. Brad was the former Director of Communications for MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. He worked for MAPS for almost 11 years, where he engaged with daily journalists and media producers around the world to enhance public knowledge about psychedelic research, which produced the largest psychedelic conference in the history, Psychedelic Science, in 2017, while also helping develop and evolve MAPS to an international brand and outreach strategy. Brad is also passionate about finding better ways for humans to work with the pharmaceutical and digital communication technologies of the 21st century. When he's not plugged in, you can find him in the mountains, carrying a backpack, and somewhere down a long trail.
Beautiful.
Huh.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Brad. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing so great. I'm so happy to be here. So grateful for the work you two are doing, getting the word out about this field.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the work that you've done and, all the studies with MAPS and really shining a light on them and everything that you're doing for the industry, as well as helping other psychedelic companies get their word out there.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for your service to humanity.
It is such a joy. I tell you, there's nothing I would rather be promoting and educating about as psychedelics.
Yeah, I feel this. I feel the same way. It's psychedelics saved my life, so it's pretty hard not to talk about it. I pretty much talk about it with anybody that'll listen.
Gosh, I would love to hear your story sometime. I know we're not here for you, but I would love to hear that.
Yeah,
everybody's
sure.
is different.
Most definitely. So I guess the big question is what ignited that spark in you? What made you passionate about getting into the psychedelic field?
Wow. Yeah, thanks, Charles. So much. Feels like it came together to bring me into this. I think like with most people, it started out as very, very personal. I was raised, in this pharmaceutical culture that we have. My entire adolescence, I was on prescription mood stabilizers for depression, manic depression, anxiety. I no longer identify with any of those diagnoses. I'm not sure if I ever had any of those diagnoses, but that was what psychiatrists and therapists were using to understand just my experience of being angry and depressed and confused about what is wrong with me. And, thinking about all these drugs that were prescribed, primarily lithium, as a mood stabilizer, just how I took that in as well. In order to be normal or functioning or happy, I would need to take a drug for the rest of my life. There was something deeply biochemically imbalanced about my brain. So I came to kind of internalize that. And I think that happens a lot. So one day I'm hanging out at my college campus at Stanford. I had been reading a great deal about the history of the 1960s and the art and the activism and the excitement and the passion of that time. And over the course of reading Alan Watts and starting to listen to folk music, I was like, what? There's this common denominator from the 1960s and 1970s, and it's psychedelic drugs. What are these? So I'm writing a paper for my American history class about the counterculture and Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters. And my friend calls me on the phone. He says, "Hey, I got two for you." It's like, two? Now, I tried psilocybin mushrooms a couple of times, natural, organic. I had been, taught about, again, all of these prescription pharmaceuticals, and I was already kind of trying to distance myself from them. Lots of sort of side effects, trying to maintain my mood and like not really taking my meds, and so I was skeptical and wanting to get away from synthetic drugs or pharmaceuticals that were made by the pharmaceutical industry. So I was like, oh, maybe psilocybin is a naturally occurring mushroom. It's been around for thousands or tens of thousands or millions of years. Monkeys used it. And, it's just like, let me try this out. And so I tried very, very small doses, and just kind of got some little sparkles around the street lights at night and thought that was cool. So my friend calls me and says, hey, I've got two for you. I was like, yeah, great. That's great. So thinking that's two little caps of mushrooms. And I was like, okay, great. And he shows up and he hands me two little squares of paper.
Yeah.
That's not mushrooms, is it? Yeah. That's not mushrooms. But I've been reading about the counterculture and the LSD and what it was. It's like, well, I've got it here in my hand. I'm going to go ahead and try it. Even though it's a synthetic, semi-synthetic. So I took it. I thought I was going to leave my head. I was going to have some sort of great deep inspiration. And what I did is I walked for 8 hours around Lake Lagunitas at Stanford University, and just enjoyed the nature, listened to the wind rustle through the grass. I nearly stepped on a rattlesnake. I just looked up at the sun and had this moment of, there's nothing wrong with me. I can see my brain. I can feel my brain. I can see my experience. There's nothing broken. I don't have any gaps there. So that was the insight that I took with me from that very first LSD experience. That was the most potent moment of that. And I'm still kind of integrating that moment. What does that mean? So the next day I go and I call my psychiatrist, who, by the way, has never given me therapy, has only been prescribing drugs for the last 10, 12 years. And I say, I think we're done here. And I don't go back. He said, are you sure? You can't just stop your medications. It's like, yeah, I can. So I did. And I think that sent me off on this path of, these are extremely powerful substances. I was lucky to be in a safe place and to know how to hike and take care of myself out in the wilderness, and just kind of immediately felt like I had so much more potential out in front of me. So I think I started becoming healthier. I started drinking less. Again, I got off my prescription drugs. I lost a lot of weight. They caused me to gain a lot of weight, which also influenced my depression and my anxiety and my ability to socially connect. And just started exercising more. I started running more. I started going out in nature more. So I don't think that taking this LSD this one time fixed my manic depression or anything like that. I would never claim anything like that. I don't think it works like that, but it certainly provided this shift in mindset that I then took with me. So I just became fascinated by these medicines. So this experience, combined with my, basically comfort with drugs, which have been taught to me by my parents and by our culture. Our culture loves drugs. Drugs are everywhere. I have my coffee, just like, they're everywhere. So I wasn't skeptical of drugs per se, but suddenly I was like, okay, maybe these substances can have some kind of value.
For sure. No, I tell people, your story mirrors a lot of my personal experience in life also. And I tell people, psychedelic medicines gave me the ability to love myself enough to actually want to change my life. And it really, and Dr. Ferber, our psychiatrist and medical director, he says that he feels that psychedelics unlock our own healing energy that's within, and I feel like we're programmed to fit in this proverbial box, the magical box of society that everybody's supposed to fit in. And for me, psychedelic medicine showed me that the box didn't exist. So all of the diagnosis, like you were touching on, that are placed on us or whatever, it's just I don't
Band-Aid.
and I don't feel like I don't identify with all of the diagnosis that I had over the years, because I think it's all just a symptom of what the real underlying issue that's going on is, and what once the psychedelics take you to the root issue and the root cause of why we're going through these things to begin with. That's when you can really step outside of that box and realize, like, hey, like, I'm okay, and this is okay, and then you just keep on moving forward and start making those healthy lifestyle changes and all of those other things that you were touching on. So it's beautiful, man.
Yeah. Now, at this time, I wasn't aware that there was a movement around psychedelics. I thought, 60s, 70s, they disappeared. It became illegal, and now there's this kind of underground thing, and there isn't really anything going on. It wasn't until I got into graduate school and I was trying to figure out something. This was at UC San Diego, working on my PhD in communication and science and technology studies. I did not end up finishing that PhD, by the way. Something I am grateful for. One of the best decisions.
I was like, wait, I didn't read doctor in your bio.
No, you did not. No, you did not. No, I just took my master's and left. In retrospect, for me, this was a great decision. But I was starting to put together my research, thinking, okay, well, who else has had this experience of these drugs going from these illicit, countercultural, dangerous, I'm never going to touch a synthetic psychedelic, to this has been one of the most important experiences of my life. And how is it relevant to psychiatry? So I started doing my research and Googling, and there's at this time there were 3 nonprofits that were working to do research with psychedelic substances. Those were the Hefner Research Institute, which was founded in the mid-90s. They were doing some psilocybin research. They have now spun off, and their founders have become the USONA Institute, also still doing incredible psilocybin research from a nonprofit perspective. And then there was the Beckley Foundation, still around. They have now become multiple different companies, a venture fund, a research company, doing a lot of things. They're based in the UK. And then MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. MAPS had done the most. I'd never heard of MDMA before, nor would I ever at that time have touched an amphetamine class drug, just being afraid of it in general. So I did a little Googling. I found maps.org. Their website, by the way, was like one of the first few thousand websites, if not first few hundred websites. I think Rick Doblin back in the early 90s was like, let's get on board with this internet thing. So they were easy to find as a result. And I downloaded and read Rick Doblin's doctoral dissertation, which was the regulation of the medical uses of psychedelics and marijuana. And what that is a strategic plan for making MDMA into a prescription medicine through the FDA drug approval process. It is a doctoral dissertation in public policy, but it is a strategic plan. So I read that and I thought, wow, this is going to work.
Yeah. There
is no way it's not going to work. So I go and try MDMA. And it was not what I expected.
Yeah.
I was at an event. It was a Lightning in a Bottle music festival in something like 2010 or 2000. Yeah, it would have been 2010. The previous night, I'd gotten separated from a bunch of friends. I'd taken a bunch of mushrooms and also had a few beers. This is not something I would ever do anymore or recommend that anybody do. But I was kind of like, not sure if I wanted to stay in graduate school and, not sure, what my role was. Hadn't been to many festivals. So I'm just going to take all of these drugs and just head out in the night, super lofted on these mushrooms and immediately lose all of my friends. get immediately separated and just kind of have this spinning out, dissociated experience by a big sound stage for several hours. I find my way back to my tent, just climb through shadows and past police officers and up a big hill and just like hiding in my tent. So I wake up the next morning saying, forget it. This is ridiculous. This is like, I'm supposed to be out here having fun. Why am I like... So this guy comes walking through the tent. Again, not something I would ever, or through our campsite, not something I would ever recommend. But I was kind of feeling kind of desperate and kind of like lonely. So I was like, well, I'll totally buy this little capsule. He says it's Molly. I was like, okay, this is probably MDMA. I got lucky, it was. And I thought, okay, you know what? Never mind this being alone and scared and hiding in the darkness thing. I'm going to take ecstasy and I'm going to feel sexy and I'm going to feel alive and I'm going to feel connected and I'm going to love this music and I'm going to dance my butt off and it's just going to be so fun. So I take this, head out into the night with my friends. Again, immediately get separated from all of them. Except this time, I'm not like, oh God. This time I'm like, what's that music over there? I'm going to go check it out. And I go up to the soundstage again that I'd been so lost and confused at the previous night. And I get up in front of the stage, I'm like right there, and I start dancing this kind of forced way and just realizing I don't like this music at all. It's terrible. So I wander off and I find myself not that long later at this little hut that had been made into a tea house. So I'm thinking like, I'm on MDMA, I'm going to be having a party. And I'm attracted to this warm, glowing light inside this tea house. And there's people sitting around the tables and drinking tea and having these intimate conversations. And I sit there for hours. And I have what feel to me like the first real conversations I've ever had in my life. Yeah. Like, I actually care what these people are talking about. I actually care about these people. I feel like they're listening to me. I feel totally connected. I sit in there for a few hours, have a bunch of tea, walk back to my tent and go to sleep and have a great night of sleep. That is not what I thought MDMA was going to be like.
No, I love like it's funny because I was having a conversation with somebody recently and like I was like, people do get a therapeutic benefit from MDMA even when they go to clubs and take it sometimes, and they were like, no, there's no therapeutic value for that. And I'm like, I don't know, like I've had some really, like you were talking about, like heart opening beautiful conversations with people where I just felt like like, and this is when in my day when I was doing this stuff, but like like beautiful connection with people that like I had never experienced before. Like I went from like this like hardcore like rap scene where people were just like not getting along at the clubs.
He recognized that version of himself
whatsoever, and there's usually fights all the time and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden I started going to EDM events, and like I was just like, it was just the most beautiful, like bringing people together, this like molten like just love. And I was just like, this is what I've been missing. Like this is this, and it made me connect with people on a level that I had like never connected before. So once again, I completely can relate to what you're saying.
That totally resonates. It's like going from the mosh pit to the tea house.
yeah, and having an amazing night, like, and just like, and then like going to sleep and like waking up and feeling good the next day, and it's just like, oh, okay, so like alcohol sucks,
Yeah.
And the thing is like I had an experience where I had drank some beers. This was years ago, and like I suffered from substance abuse issues, so psychedelics ended up saving my life and getting me sober. But the thing is that I drank some beers, and then I ate 6 grams of mushrooms, and then I went out into the universe, connected with everything, realized the oneness of it all, and that we were all extensions of the divine. And then actually that propelled me to quit drinking and taking the other drugs that I was taking, because I was just like, oh, I'm basically like poisoning God every time I do this.
Wow.
Or the consciousness, and so I wouldn't suggest anybody take alcohol and mushrooms together too, but it's funny because that night actually propelled me to change my life and stop drinking, so
wow.
It's fun how we can stumble onto these it's like when I first started taking psychedelics, and having these kind of experiences, I actually didn't go into it with that like mindset of like, oh, this is gonna like heal certain parts of me that I didn't realize needed healing and propel me forward to actually change my life. But like I did have those kind of experiences outside of a facility, so like I definitely think that in my eyes there is a place for everything.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. Exactly the same way.
For sure. Now, so here's a big question. So I would love to touch on with your work with MAPS, if
sure. Yeah, it's perfect timing because that's what propelled me into that.
Love it.
I'm gonna say, like, I say this every time when we have a professional on this podcast, is like, I love the story behind what got them into this field, because everybody has their own reason for being so passionate, but it's always about how psychedelic medicines have propelled them to be there. Nobody's here like not really knowing what they're doing. They've all had some sort of experience that's aided them on this journey, and now they have to get their message out there and help others.
Yeah.
Well, Christina, I think 4 or 5 years ago, I would have completely agreed with you that the professionals who are in the field of psychedelics come in because they've had some amazing, deep personal experience themselves, and that's why they're passionate about it. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I think we're in a new place.
I think.
Well, everybody we interview.
No. I agree with what you're saying, because I do see you have a set of people that are there for that, and then also there's a huge group of people that just think this is going to be a really lucrative industry.
Yep. Yeah, that's where we're at now. So rewinding a bunch of years, thinking, what is the big deal with MDMA? Finding out what is the big deal with MDMA on a personal level, and then feeling this, noticing that there's a huge community or a growing community around psychedelics that have come together around MAPS and Beckley Foundation and Hefner and just the underground as well for many, many years, since the 80s, really since MDMA was criminalized, and since before then. Like, the movement never stopped.
Yeah.
Finding out that there's this community. I was in grad school. I was writing this PhD dissertation about how it takes a community to change how we think about our technologies, or many communities, because that's how knowledge gets created. So I'm sitting alone in my dorm writing about community. I couldn't continue. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. So I left, and I was like, I'm going to go get a job in the cannabis space or something that's more connected to drug policy reform. About a year later, I've got an internship with MAPS. Nice. I'm doing some writing and editing for them. They have a communications director who'd been with them, Randy Hankin, for a few years. I started working with him and with Rick Doblin. Valerie Mojeko was the deputy director at the time. MAPS had 8 employees at this time. They were working out of a little house on Highway 1 on Mission Street in Santa Cruz. Converted house. I moved to Santa Cruz for a couple of summers and started volunteering with them. Then I get a call saying, hey, we need a new director, or we're losing our director of communications. Will you come in and help us with communications? So at that time, that meant coming on as the only member of the communications team at MAPS, helping get the word out about the phase 2 trials that at that time MAPS was engaged in. MAPS was doing ibogaine research and MDMA research, and some trying to do cannabis research, and some ayahuasca research also. So I was the only member of the communications team, came in as an associate, and ended up bringing on more folks and moving up to director really quickly, and building their entire communications team and department and plan. When I left, almost 11 years later, in June of 2020, there were a couple hundred employees across the public benefit corporation and the nonprofit and the large communications team. And just felt like I'd been really successful during that time in growing, in helping MAPS grow. So much had happened. They moved into phase 3 trials, had just completed a $30 million fundraise, which was at that time their largest, and just kind of feeling like MAPS was no longer the only thing.
Yeah.
10 years ago, if you wanted to get involved in psychedelics, again, there were just a couple of little opportunities. That is legal psychedelics.
Yeah.
Get to like file your taxes and say, yes, I work in psychedelics. And there was June of 2020, COVID. Not sure what I was going to do at that stage. I actually wasn't sure if I was going to continue doing independent consulting for psychedelics or if I was going to start an outdoor retreat company. I actually founded both companies in the same week. I thought, like, why are there rules against you can't start two companies in the same day? Who would ever try to do that? And I'm trying to do that.
Oh, I love it. We actually opened up our facility a week before the lockdown.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was just literally like the synchronicity of the
and had a
universe
3-month-old baby
was behind us. And
that's the real project.
Right? No, I quit my jobs. We took a leap of faith, and it's because like this stuff saved my life. So I knew I needed to do this. This was the direction that we needed to go in, and she was hesitant yet very supportive. And then once we actually got the ball rolling and got everything going, it was just it was like any other business I think probably would have failed, but the fact is that people needed this more than ever at that time. And here we are now, and we've done thousands of ketamine treatments and helped hundreds and hundreds of people get off of all their pharmaceutical medications at our facility. So it's like, just anybody starting a company back around that time, it's like, more power to you, and
you're still standing,
and you're still standing, which is a beautiful thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And like you're saying, mental health, I mean, that's exploded.
There's like nothing ever worked for me. Nothing ever worked for me ever, but psychedelics did, and I'm finding that so many people that we treat and so many of my personal friends and so many of the stories that I heal, it's like, this people that have been suffering for so long with no avail. And then I think one of the biggest taboos that I'm out here trying to break the stigma of is that psychedelics need to be a last resort. It's like, how about it should be like the first resort? Let's skip all of the years of trying to throw a dart at a dartboard with our eyes closed. Like this stuff works, and why go on a string of other medications to see if they work before using something that we know that works?
Well, the psychedelics as a last resort message, that is coming out of the war on drugs. The messaging in this movement has continued to change.
It's a whole re-education campaign and education campaign too. I mean, especially on the ketamine side of things, there's so much I don't know there's so much knowledge out there that's not the truth.
Then a lot of people aren't actually doing psychedelic ketamine therapy. We specialize in psychedelic therapeutic doses at our facility. Intermuscular shots of the medicine, which is also another taboo thing where people are like, oh, and we're finding that intermuscular shots are really getting people into those true disassociated states where the psychedelic experiences are happening. So I think just getting the information out there, and I think
that's what your company is doing, right?
That's what I want to do. Is make sure that message is getting across. I think the most important thing that I keep emphasizing with my clients, and they're for-profit clients and they're nonprofit clients all over the map, treatment providers, trainers, technology companies, pharmaceutical companies, anybody working in this field. What I'm trying to get across now is that the message has changed over the last few years. And it used to be, let's just try to get a word in edgewise in the public conversation about maybe these substances aren't so bad. Maybe they're good for some things, sometimes for some people, last resort, all of that. The message is definitely changed now. I think now the bigger risk is that people come away thinking that these are cure-alls, or that they're miracles, or that you don't need therapy, or that they're good for everybody, or that they're always going to work, or that they don't have risks. And so now what I find myself repeating over and over isn't, hey, everybody, these might be good. Now it's like, hey, let's slow our roll a little bit. Pun semi-intended.
That was a good one.
Oh, for sure. Like
we were just talking to somebody else, and we were saying, like, you can't just do the treatment and expect it to work. You have to actually commit and do the work.
It's a catalyst.
Yeah.
It's a tool. It gives you the opportunity to grab the reins of your life and then start applying new lifestyle changes like, exercise, breath work, meditation, all of the things that are the real recipe for long-term success with the medication. It's like, as cliche as it sounds, I tell people, if nothing changes, nothing changes. You'll have a huge insight from the medicine, but the real thing is to take the insight and start applying that to your life.
Yeah. And if you look at the mythology of the 1960s, is that you're going to take these substances and have some transformative experience. You're going to tune in, you're going to turn on, you're going to drop out, your hair's going to grow long, you're going to reject all societal values.
Yeah.
I don't see that. That didn't happen to me. It doesn't seem like it happened to you.
No.
I
think sometimes people just take it too far.
No, listen, I tell people that this isn't going to change the person you are at the core of your being. It's going to enhance all of the positive aspects of your life, and it's going to level you up from the ones that might have been holding you back.
And when we're speaking with the folks who are historically the most hesitant, so conservative audiences and religious audiences, you really can't tell them that you're going to take this and have all of your political perspectives changed. Nobody's going to do no.
Like I hate to say it like this, but it's the truth. It's like a decade ago when I had my first profound out-of-body psychedelic experience. I came back to my body and I'm like, everything I've ever believed was a lie. It was like one of those like shell shock experiences, It's
it can happen. But that's a terrifying prospect.
And see, that's where integration's so important.
Yeah.
Having somebody to integrate those integrate those experiences.
Yeah. So instead, I try to, instead the message is more, you can become more yourself. I work with an amazing nonprofit called Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions, VETS. And that's a message that gets across loud and clear to especially Special Forces veterans, Navy SEALs, often with the PTSD and TBI that they're experiencing. They end up very separated from their families. And that's really often the number one thing that leads them into finding alternative treatments, is feeling separated from their families. Their marriage is on the rocks. They feel like they can't be there for their kids. And they often go through these therapies through VETS, which provides grants and support, integration, preparation, counseling, coaching, group and individual for these folks and their partners. They come out and they say, I'm just more here than I was before. I'm more present. I still vote the way I voted. I still feel the same way about the service that I gave, and I feel good about it, and just a deeper sense of connection and intimacy.
I love it.
Christina
and I are actually launching our nonprofit called the Warriors of Consciousness, where we're raising money to support people through psychedelic ketamine therapy. And then when MDMA goes through, we'll do that as well. It's just we're trying to keep it at 2 FDA-approved medications so we can get politicians and law enforcement involved and stuff like that. But I would love to have another conversation with you outside of this podcast and see if there's any opportunity to collaborate together.
That sounds wonderful. There's so much need.
Yeah,
so
for
much.
sure.
I feel like that time, the half an hour just flew by.
Yeah, no, this was
wow. We have so much more to talk about.
I know.
No, we'll definitely have to have you back on. For sure, man.
Yeah,
listen, once again, thank you so much for your your service to humanity, and we appreciate all of the amazing work that you're doing out there.
Oh, thank you both. It's been a really great conversation.
Thank you.
Look forward to more.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining with us today on this edition of Psychedelic Radio. You can download past episodes of our program by going to cannabisradio.com or by subscribing to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. And if nobody's told you that they love you lately, we do.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.